Alrighty, back with part 4 of the 1901. We're going exploration as to why it's a communist manifesto. So if you're only joining it now, go back into 1, 2, and 3. They're very critical to that background knowledge you're going to need as to why I'm saying what I'm saying and why I can do that with confidence. Alright, so this is the thing that Tim Dwyer put up earlier, saying, you know, look at these criminals, what they've done. Not disputing any of that. It's more about understanding what that actually is, that's only merely a symptom of the actual problem, but that problem was already in place. The root cause was well established before Australia was even colonised. Right? So these things are just naturally going to happen, but if you just think that you've only discovered this, and this is the truth, and this is where it's done, you're never going to be able to get to the solution because you're not going to understand how you were already enslaved before this even started, and this was just another part. It was already part of the plan. These people are just pawns playing their part. These criminal cabals, they plan this thousands of years ahead of time, right? They've got their whole thing set up, and it's all incremental. So this is just the next step in the plan. This is what's really being missed by a lot of people. So when these people come up, these talking heads, the freedom fighters, so to speak, they've got this conviction. It's easy to fall for that, because you're seeing things that, look legit, and they are. Like, they're not saying that didn't happen, but it's not understanding the actual root cause. And that's the problem. When people don't understand the root cause, they keep repeating their own pain. And then they never get out. And that's the whole point. If you're going to run a slavery structure, you need to seal all the exits. And you need to do a really good job on people. And so far, most people have fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. Now, like I said in the first video, I too fell for this stuff too. It's not like I'm above it. It's just about whether you're willing to own up to the fact that you can be fooled, right? And then you can actually grow and learn and expand and get past your limits. So that's what's really on offer here. Can you own up to yourself that you are susceptible to being seduced to that which appeals to your biases and prejudices? So now we're going to listen to Will explain more about the difference between collectivism and individualism and why that 1901, you'll hopefully be able to start piecing together why it is a collectivist manifesto. That's just another word for communism.
So we're talking on the left-hand side with individualism, we're talking about inalienable rights. What's that? Inalienable rights is rights that you are born with. That's rights that you just have by the very fact that you're living. Yeah? And of course the collectivist version of that on this side is you have rights that we provide, that we give you. Yeah? And that means that if they can give you those rights, they can take them away again. So we have to be a bit careful about human rights, because human rights, I think, is connected with the United Nations, and that's a term that's been used with that. Okay, so individual rights is what you're talking about, or inalienable rights. That's what's connected to this philosophy over here on the left-hand side. Okay?
So, all right. Hopefully that's giving you a bit more context, guys. Let's go to the next one.
So let's get into that. So what we're really talking about here is the relationship between the people and some organisation to support their living. That's really what we're talking about. Okay, we've got the people who live in, and by the way, it doesn't have to be a country, it doesn't have to be a nation. It could be a village somewhere, it could be a town, it could be the village in South America, in the middle of the Amazon. It's exactly the same principle. Yeah? You've got the people, and you've got some people, maybe, who are going to be providing, some kind of organisation that are going to provide the support to those people in some fashion. That's kind of what we're talking about here. And the key question is it that the people are in authority over that organisation that's supporting their living, or is it the other way around, that organisation that's supposed to be supporting the people's living it's actually an authority over them? Isn't that the key question? That's what it's all about, actually, ladies and gentlemen. If we're going to start talking about the Constitution and about our governing system, that's really the key question.
Okay, hopefully that nails it there for you guys. It's not a government. The whole thing is meant to be an organisation that supports the people's living. That's why they're called public servants. That's why they take oaths, because that's them saying they're going to stand in honour of the promise to support the people's living. So you cannot support the people's living, especially quality living, if you're going to dictate terms to them. That is going rogue. And the point of the Constitution is to draw that line. That's all it is drawing a line between when they're doing their role as we've allowed them to, and when they've gone rogue. And if you don't know what that line is, then you can't do anything about it. So a Constitution doesn't save anybody. All it does is it sets a standard that we can all recognize, and then we ourselves, we the people, decide how we want to deal with that. But if you don't know that line, you're going to keep taking more and more punishment. And that's all the Constitution is. A lot of people go, oh, Magna Carta 1215, it doesn't do anything. Of course it doesn't. It's writing on a paper. It's you caring enough to want to do something about that standard. But if you don't know the standard, how are you going to do something about it? So, this is the thing. People just think, and they say to me, what's your solution? Like, it's just because I'm giving you information about it, that doesn't mean that it's my solution. I'm just giving you knowledge, to the best of my ability. So then you can use your discernment. You can use your capacity to care to actually take the steps that in your heart, your consciousness, are required. No one can dictate that to you. That's never been a thing that I've ever said, but yet I keep getting that over and over again. This just shows you that slave programming. That was like, what's your solution? Like that. It's always polarized thinking. That shows you how well people are programmed. So we're going to move on.
Here's another quote from that great man, Lysander Spooner. Again, an essay on trial by jury. Same essay. I like that one. Any government that is its own judge of and determines authoritatively for the people what are its own powers over the people is an absolute government, of course. It has all the powers it chooses to exercise. There is no other, or at least no more accurate, definition of a despotism than this. On the other hand, any people that judge of and determine authoritatively for the government what are their liberties against the government retain all the liberties they wish to enjoy, and this is freedom. So that's the system in society where you get to be an anarchist. Because what you're basically saying is the government gets out of the way and it allows us to run our lives. Sounded good. Right.
So just switch that word government, because that's a big mind trick in itself, because most people are used to using it, to organizational structure, that's there to support the people's living. If you look at it like that, that is going to help you really understand what's just been said there. I think we're going to move into voting now.
Now, people sense that there is something wrong with government, but they can't express what that is. Yeah, up until recently, up until about a month ago, we started clarifying these issues. People, we would say, well, what's the Constitution? What is a Constitution? What is it? How does the government work? And of course, loads of people in the country, very great number of people in the country, just don't, they wouldn't be able to answer that question. I couldn't answer that question either about 6-7 years ago. And that's why I thought I'd probably better get into this, And this is the problem we've got, because most of the population, therefore, do not understand the governing system in this country and how it's supposed to work.
And that's here in Australia as well, guys. No different, because we run off the exact same structure, because we are part of the Commonwealth. It's no different. It's the exact same one. It doesn't change. Think about who the public servants are supposed to take an oath to. The most senior public servant. And who's that? The monarch. And what's the monarch's role? It's just to make sure that the provision of services are done, for the entire kingdom that they're responsible for. And they're just a servant, nothing else. But we've been told all these other things, right? So we fall for it. And so anyone who starts using legislation and these so-called constitutions or some kind of authority doesn't understand individual rights. They really don't. And they say things like, the Constitution grants us our rights. That's what they'll say. It's our common law. Like seriously, think about the absurdity of that something written on paper can be your common law. Written by who? Your masters. I mean, the absurdity is it's staggering. And this is what still gets perpetuated as knowledge these days. All right, let's move on.
So the central issue is, what's the original setup? How was it set up to work? Okay, so we've got the limits of a governing system. Is it A, tyranny because you've got the government's in authority, in which case anything goes, frankly. Or you've got B, the people are in authority. It's one or the other. There isn't a middle ground anywhere. And you'll see in a minute when we quote Lysander Spooner, one of the key people in this subject, you'll see that he articulates this absolutely brilliantly. So if the framework was set up correctly, then people need to know what that is. And that thing that we're talking about there, that framework, to decide which way it goes, is the Constitution. That's what it is. And if you don't know that the Constitution was set up to make you the authority over the government, which is really just an administration, as opposed to the other way around, then it's got to be the central issue, isn't it, of your life, in a sense, because you're living in that community, in that society. If the government thinks it's an authority over you, that's going to create a very different situation in your life to the other way around, okay? So that's what it is. That's what we're defining, is the Constitution. It's the Constitution that basically defines the relationship of the government to its people. And it's also going to define the limitations, defining government crime. It's the limitations placed on government. Because what that's basically saying is, government is legitimate up to this point. Beyond that point, it's illegitimate. It delegitimizes itself by going beyond. It's acting criminally.
Really critical, right? So remember, it's not a government. That's the mind trick that we're under, that they have authority, but they don't. Because we all have a conscience, so someone can't gain access over our own conscience if they come from the same place, right? It's not possible. So they can't really be government, but that's the word that they've used, so we think that they have authority. So they're just an organisational structure, a bunch of people employed to do a job to help support the people's living. Either we have authority over it, or it has authority over us. And so for thousands of years, that's been the case. That the cabal, the small bunch of dark priest class, whatever you want to call them, that seek to control and dominate. They always are looking for ways to subvert your consciousness, to get you to believe that there's a reason why they need to exist. And this is the essence of what's in that 1901. It just supports that ideology, that we are a bunch of cattle that can't make decisions for ourselves, that need to be ruled. That's all that is, if you can really understand the principle behind it. So let's see what else Will's got to say. Oh no, it's up to me now, actually. I forgot about this. So, let's have a look what it says, and how they control and dominate us. The judicial power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in the Federal Supreme Court, to be called the High Court of Australia, and in such other federal courts as Parliament creates. So there you go, your ruling class of masters, they create the power to punish. And in such other courts as it invests with federal jurisdiction. Anyone who knows what jurisdiction means, it means, juris means law, diction means to speak, so it means that you create yourself the power to speak what is law, and who can do that? Only a God, right? So these are self-elected gods that's putting it right there in your face. The High Court shall consist of a Chief Justice, so that's one of their employees, and so many other justices, not less than 2, as the Parliament prescribes. So, again, granting themselves authority to dictate to you, to be your masters. Right there, it's in your face, guys. People don't know how to read what's there, and then they still go into these places thinking that they're going to get justice, right? And this is what you get. You ever wondered why they wear the sheep's wool over their heads? Because have a look at the top picture. That's all they're really telling you. They're showing you who they really are, right? We've just never known how to read the symbolism. But now, hopefully, that helps you. All right, last one. How tyrannies thrive. Removal from the jurors, their judgment on the justice of equity issues transforms trial by jury into unlawful, one-sided, unfair mistrial by government judges, the corrupt method by which tyrannies thrive. This enables every persecution, stealth tax, oppression, and money-motivated subterfuge, which means deception, and injustice a government introduces and which then lawlessly claims to be the law. So I haven't gotten into trial by jury, that's coming. That is the mechanism by how we can make sure that our system of service, the public servants, can never get one over us, that we are constantly regulating them and keeping them in check. Where they are the ones who need to be in fear of us, because they're accountable to us, and that can only be tried by jury. Not to be confused with jury trials. That's an entirely different matter, because a jury trial, there is a judge, and who's sitting there? It's that wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And then you don't have any power. All you get to do is decide guilty or not guilty, but you don't get to actually put their actual legislation under the microscope. Only trial by jury does that. That's why it's in the words. It's a trial run by the jury. Really important to understand that. Where jury trials are a whole different thing, right? It's just one aspect added to it to make you believe you have some control over your life. That's an entirely different thing. And so it's about understanding and having those distinctions and being able to discern the difference between them. That's where your freedom lies, guys. That's why I do this content.